Hello magical makers, welcome back to another YouTube tutorial by me, Nicole of Woven Tales Designs. In today's tutorial, we are covering the third version of the Ever After hat pattern, 3 out of 4. This is the glue chunky weight version. So this works up with category 5 weight yarn. This also works up with the hot glue option. If you would like the sew version of this Ever After hat tutorial, that is linked in the description below, along with the other 2 versions. Before we dive into the materials and tools of this pattern that we'll need to get into, I want to give you a few details just in case you've never even worked up the headband before and you want to make sure that this is the right project for you. This is indeed an intermediate level project. So if you are an absolute beginner, I would not recommend this pattern. It will very much frustrate you. And if you're on a time crunch trying to make these for the parks, this will definitely ruffle your feathers a little bit. However, on that note, this is definitely a faster version to make than the headband, and this actually is much more universal of a design than the headband is because it works for kids. So much better to put a kid in a hat than a headband. It works for guys, people that want the gender neutral look, people that want the casual sporty look, anybody that just is preferring to wear a hat over a headband. This is a great version. I prefer it because my hair gets very frizzy after a day at the parks, and I would prefer to not have my ends splitting all day long. So this is my favorite version so far because I am a hat girl. If you have worked up the headband version of this pattern, you will need to have 4 of the ear bases already finished, which are these circular pieces, circular flat pieces, but only work those up and that is it, because you will absolutely have to be doing a couple of new things in this pattern that you didn't do with the headband version because of the way it's attached to the hat. But we cover everything from start to finish, so if you don't even want to worry about those other videos, don't worry about them. Let's also go over the types of stitches that we're using today with their abbreviations, as well as the crochet techniques that you will be seeing in this tutorial. For the stitches that we will be using today, you will need to know how to work a single crochet stitch, half double crochet stitch, slip stitch, chain, as well as you will need to know how to work continuously in the round. That is for this part right here. The only other kind of crazy technique that we will be using today, aside from just basic gluing things, which that does not take that much technique, I promise you, you will also need to know how to work into the third loop only of a half double crochet stitch. I do break that down in the video when we get to that point where we're seaming the ear bases together, but just know if you want a little bit of a background to it before you start the whole shebang, that might actually help you more than it will hurt you. And I do slow things down. You can use the playback speed, rewind, reverse, if you need all of that, but it is so much more smoother than the Ever After headband because we're just working with the ear bases together. We're not making an ear strip and then connecting them together. We're just doing it all in one go, and I promise you it's so much more simpler and so much faster than the headband, which is great. Now we're going to get into the materials and tools that we will need to use to create our Ever After hat.
Okay, let's get into the tools and materials we will need for this tutorial. I hope that my voice isn't too annoying. You'll be hearing a lot of me for this pattern. First things first, we are going to crochet today with a 6mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors we will need, a stitch marker because we are working continuously in the round, and we'll be needing a measuring tape, and I do use the inches unit of measurement. We will need a tapestry needle, and we're going to need something to write with to mark onto our hat. So just in case you're worried about this, you are not going to see any of the markings on the hat once the ears are added. So just choose a Sharpie marker, whatever you got in stock. And then we of course need something to glue things with. So grab yourself a hot glue gun that you love, that you know, that you adore. I like my Gorilla Glue gun. It works just fine. And then for our materials, we are going to need a baseball hat, of course. That is the hero of our piece. It's a pretty standard one that I'm showing you today. It's got 6 sections, button on top, and some of those eyelets on the side. For our yarn today, we are going to be using the chunky weight yarn as in the description of the video. You're actually going to see me using 2 different types of yarn for this video, and that's just so you can see the difference in the seaming stitches and the regular parts of the ear. I just didn't want that to be confusing, but you can see the yardage up on the screen here. We'll need polyfill stuffing, and we'll also need a high density craft foam if you're using what I use. If you don't use what I use, you can use cardboard, you can use pretty much actually anything that could stabilize the inside of the ear. Plastic, if you want to recycle, it's up to you. And on that note, now that we've talked those through, let's go ahead and grab our hook and our yarn and get into chapter 1, where we start making the ear bases. Yay! Okay, so like I said, we're starting off with what I like to call the ear bases. These are the main circular flat pieces of the ears that you see, the main attraction. I developed this shape that we're going to be making quite a time ago, and I almost stumbled upon it by as if by magic, but it's stuck with me ever since, so I hope you're ready for this. To begin our ear base, we are going to create a magic ring. Do that however you see fit. Chain 1 to begin, and then you're going to work 7 single crochets into our magic ring, and that is pretty standard for the mouse ears. If you've worked the headband version, I also began with a stitch count of 7, and we increased for, X amount of rows. It depends on the style, but there we go, 7 single crochets into the magic ring, and then once you have those worked up, pull that original tail tightly to close the ring, and get ready for round 2. Okay, so for round 2, pretty standard circular growth pattern here. We are going to work an increase stitch into every stitch around. You're doing that 7 times, doubling your stitch count for a total of 14 stitches for round 2. Don't forget to add in that stitch marker to keep track of the first stitch of your round. And just a little refresher, if you're having a mom brain moment like I do every now and then, an increase for this pattern is just 2 single crochet into the same stitch. And I just listed it as an increase to simplify the wording here. You normally in a normal pattern would see single crochet increase to indicate that it is single crochet increase, but I just put increase, very similar to how amigurumi patterns are written, because this is almost like an amigurumi pattern, All right, once we have reached the end of round 2, I like to take a second here to pause and tighten and pull that original tail again, and then I go ahead and I knot it as close to my back of my piece as I can get it. I just do this just to get it out the way and be done with it, and that way I don't have to do it at the end. I can move on to the next piece. Also, I found that if I do this early and ahead of time, I actually have a much more consistent stitch gauge for my little ear base, and I know it's such a small piece to worry about that with, but I really do like having a streamlined look with these ears. All right, and so once we've done that, we're going to begin with round 3, and we are working a repeat all the way around of single crochet into the next stitch and then increase into the next stitch. That's again single crochet into the next stitch and increase into the next stitch all the way around for a new stitch count total of 21 stitches for round 3. 21 stitches. And that's about it. Single crochet in the round is super fun, super fast. We'll get to the more tricky things later, but for now we are enjoying these single crochets in the round. Okay, so here we go. We are working up another round of repeats here. Now this is going to be our last grow round for the child size. This is where we're going to start splitting for the adult and child size. It's just one row or one round of a difference, so not too crazy, don't worry about that. But our repeat for both sizes for round 4 are going to be single crochet into the next 2 stitches and then increase into the next stitch. You're repeating that all the way around for a new stitch count total of 28 stitches for round 4. Once you have reached this end of the round, if you are working the child size, you will join with a slip stitch to the first stitch, but that's just for the child size. So as you can see here, I have finished my round. For round 4, I have 28 stitches, and I am just joining to the first stitch I made with a slip stitch. That is only if you work the child size. If you're working the adult size, you will continue on with one more round of increases. So child size people, hold off for the next round after this one, and we'll see you in a little bit. But if you're moving forward, round 5, we are working a pattern repeat of single crochet into the next 3 stitches and then increase into the next stitch. You are increasing your stitch count again in this round. You're going to have a total stitch count of 35 stitches for round 5. And again, continue this around. We are single crochet into the next 3 stitches, increase into the next stitch, all the way around. At the end of this round, again, working the adult size, this is adult size only, you will join to the first stitch made. And then the following round after this will not be any more single crochets. This is our last growth round. You'll see why in a little bit. All right, so we've reached the end of the round for the adult size, the last increase round. Now both sizes here, welcome back. We're going to join together here. This is an all skate, as we used to say in my past profession. I used to be a dancer, if you didn't know that about me. I used to be a performer for Walt Disney World. How fun. Okay, anyway, so all sizes here to begin round 5 or 6. We are going to begin with, after our join, a chain 2. And then we're going to half double crochet into the same stitch as joining. And then no increases. You're just going to work half double crochet into the next 22 or 28 stitches, 22 if you're working the child size, 28 if you're working the adult size. And then into the next and final place, you are going to work half double crochet, chain 2, and slip stitch, all in the next and final stitch. So just to repeat that, that is after your join, you're going to work up a chain 2, half double crochet into the same stitch as joining, then half double crochet into the next 22 or 28 stitches, and then finish with a half double crochet, chain 2, slip stitch, all in that next and final stitch. And then you're going from here to fasten off and weave in your ends. You will not need any ends, just weave them in before it's too late. You will not want to do it later, I promise. And at the end of this round here, you are going to have a total of 24 or 30 half double crochet stitches, and you should have 2 chain 2s, one at the beginning and one at the end. Now, as you can see with the footage in front of you, you are left with unworked stitches. That is on purpose. That is not a mistake. You are correct. The reason you have these is we need a less long edge to attach the base of the ear to our hat. So if you've worked up the headband pattern, it is the same exact thing. And I do know that this part tends to trip people up initially, but trust the process. I promise you, you're doing great. But you should have 4 or 5 unworked stitches if you've worked up your stitch count correctly. So 4 stitches should be unworked if you're working the child size, and then 5 should be unworked if you're working the adult size. Once you have that end woven in, go ahead and set your piece off to the side. At this point now, you are going to go ahead and work up 2 more additional ear bases exactly like this, rounds 1 through 5 or 6. So now you see I have 3 identical ones here. You're going to work them up just like that. And then we're going to work up a 4th and final ear base that is only working rounds 1 through 4 or 5. So basically only the single crochet rounds join to the first stitch made like you did at the end of 4 or 5, and then you're going to pull up a long loop. We're going to use that 4th and final ear base for the next section of the ear pattern. Alrighty, work that up and I will see you in a little bit. Okie dokie, so as directed, we have here worked up a 4th and final ear base, or the beginning of it. This is rounds 1 through 4 or 5. What we're going to do is we're going to use this to kind of be a template to cut out our ear inserts. And all we have to do is really, really simple. Make sure you have a long loop pulled up, by the way, so that it doesn't unravel. You're going to set this directly on top of your insert material, whether you're working with the craft foam or a piece of cardboard or plastic or whatever you're using. And there's 2 methods to trace this shape onto your material. You can either use the sharp edge of a pair of scissors like I have in previous videos for the headband version, Or if you have a light enough material like I am using today, which is much better for demonstration, might I add, you can just go in with one of those markers that you set aside for your hat prep and just kind of mark lightly in dashed lines around your partially worked up ear base. I used to just draw like one singular line all the way around, and I realized that it really wasn't necessary because I'm not 5 and I know how to cut a circle out. Nothing against 5-year-olds. My son will become a 5-year-old eventually one day, but I do know what a circle is supposed to look like. So all I need to know really is how big that I need to make it. So as long as you do a little dash line, or you can do a full solid line, it's up to you. And now if you were to use the sharp edges of scissors to do this same process, that'll give you a nice little imprint on the foam, which will make it also easy and another alternative method to get that shape kind of like traced out on your foam or whatever material you're using. I don't know how easy this would be to do with scissors on cardboard. So if you're using cardboard, I'd probably just use like a marker. But I ran into the problem originally when I worked the pattern up with black foam. I had no writing utensil that would work that I could see onto the foam because it was so dark. So I ended up using the scissors and it worked out just fine. Sometimes I also used like a tapestry needle if I couldn't find my scissors, because of course, when you have scissors and lots of them, you just can never find them when you need them. So sometimes I'd use a tapestry needle and I'd score into the foam to get this shape traced out. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that jibber jabber. So here we go. We've traced and cut out that shape. Go ahead and trim any edges that look like they're a little much, or if there's like kind of pointy ends. This shape does really reflect through the inside of the ear. So I would really avoid a rough cut of this. It is going to affect the shape of your ears. And then we will need to cut one more chunk of the material out here to emulate the kind of flatter bottom edge of our ears. So there's several ways you can do this. I also list different ways in the pattern itself in the written version, but the quickest and easiest way is to just fold up a bottom edge. Doesn't matter which one. And I kind of take my scissors there and kind of swipe in with the points, and I kind of mark out where to cut. And you just want to cut off a flat bottom piece right here. And I would say it's about 1/2 inch of the bottom cut off. You can curve it if you want. I kind of just leave it a little bit flat. And there you go. That's all you need to do to cut that first ear insert. I like to place it back on top of my ear base just to see that I was able to cut it true to size. You don't want it to be bigger than your ear base because that will overstretch the ear itself. And now, last step for the inserts, you're just going to take that first cut piece and trace it and cut a second piece from it. And that way you have 2 identical inserts. Look at that. You are so smart with your scissors. I'm so proud of you. Anyway, okay, enough praise. Let's move on. We have finished our ear inserts, so we're going to do that last round to end this section. Work up round 5 or 6 of the ear base to finish this 4th one, and then set it aside with the others. Make sure they all look pretty identical, weave in those ends. And now we can move on to what I think is actually the trickiest part of the pattern, which is the seaming. So get your head on. Let's dive right in. Okay, so let's set those ear inserts aside. We are now going to go ahead and work on seaming our bases together. They are 4 pieces. We'd like to have them be 2 seamed ears. So in order to do so, we're gonna talk a little bit about the seaming method. If you're joining in now because you have made your ear bases already, you've been familiar with the previous patterns, welcome. What we need to do is also pair our ear bases together. So if you're like me and you worked with some variegated yarn, go ahead and just select the 2 that you want to match up and then put the other 2 aside. We're doing 1 ear at a time, as you should. You're going to create a slip knot, a normal slip knot. And again, I'm working with a contrasting yarn here, so it is easier for you to see my methods. You're gonna work up a chain 3 to begin, and then the first thing we do here is make an ear tab. So you'll see why we do this later when we go to attach the ears to the hat, but just trust the process to start here. You can work into the back bumps or the regular back loop of the chain for this first row, but for row 1, we are single crocheting into the second chain from the hook, the last chain from the hook, and then we're going to go ahead and chain 1 and turn our work. And there we have it. Sorry if that got out of frame a little bit. I must not have been looking at the camera, and I must have been looking at a text message because I am a millennial and I'm addicted to my phone. Anyway, row 2, here we go, easy. After we chained 1 and turn, we are going to work a decreasing stitch, and that is yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both loops on your hook, chain 1 and turn, and that is our ear tab. It's slightly shorter or slightly less instruction than the medium weight version of the glue edition of this pattern, but for now, we have that ear tab done. We're gonna set that aside, and we're gonna do a quick talk on the third loops and how to find them on our ear base here. Okay, so folks, seaming these ear bases is going to be a little tricky to begin at first, but I promise you it's easy as we move along. When we look at a half double crochet stitch, if you're unfamiliar with the third loop, we have the top of the stitch, which looks like a V, and then we have the back of the stitch, and you're gonna find this horizontal bar. If you put your needle or hook into the horizontal bar, you won't see that coming through on the right side of the work. So on the wrong side of the work is where we're gonna find this third loop. It is super easy to get your hook into. It should be super easy. And to begin our seaming, we will put those right sides of our ear bases together. I'm gonna probably start calling them pieces. So put the right sides of your pieces together. You're gonna line up those unworked stitches from rounds 4 and 5. And then you're gonna, as we move along, every half double crochet stitch should match each other. So, and please excuse my rambling because this, I feel like it's easy to see and it's hard to talk it through. To begin our first seaming stitch, it's going to be a little trickier than the rest of them, so we're going to do this together and slow. You're going to insert your hook into the top of the stitch from row 2 of the first ear tab. You're going to have 2 things on your hook right now, the top of the stitch and the working loop of yarn. You're going to pick up your front piece, the piece, the ear base closest to you. The wrong side should be facing you. And you're going to locate the last half double crochet of the last round of that ear base. So if I flip my work over here, I see that I have a half double crochet that the last one I made, the chain 2 is next to it. If you want to pull at the chain 2 to kind of distinguish where you're at, find the top of that half double crochet stitch and then carefully insert your hook into the third loop that is directly below the top of that stitch. That's the third loop. Take your time getting your hook into that. It can be a little tight just because it's crowded that chain 2 sequence at the start of the round, but it shouldn't be too difficult. Once you have that, you should have 3 things on your hook. The third loop of that first piece, the top of the stitch from row 2 of the ear tab, and then the loop of working yarn. Now you're going to pick up the second ear base and you're going to locate the first half double crochet of that last round. You're going to find the top of the stitch, peel it over so that you can see the back wrong side of the stitch. And then you're going to insert your hook into that third loop right there. Now this one is going to be pretty tight compared to the first one that we put our hook into, but do your best. If you need to use the underside of your hook to kind of get up in there and then kind of reposition it, that's fine. You're going to have 4 things on your hook now. We have the back third loop, the front third loop, the top of the stitch from the ear tab, and then the working loop of yarn. Now we can regrip our yarn as you normally do. And you are going to yarn over, pull through that back third loop, pull through that front third loop. I kind of tighten my yarn here a little bit. I pull through the top of the stitch from the ear tab, and finally the loop on your hook. And that is our first seaming stitch. So we can forget about the ear tab from here. We won't need to be using it anymore. And let's talk about the rest of the seaming stitches because it's much more simpler. The beginning was complicated. This part is simple. Okay, now we are going to work every seaming stitch the same here on out. With the working loop of yarn on your hook, you're going to insert your hook into the next third loop of the next stitch on the front piece. You're going to insert your hook into the next third loop of the next stitch on the back piece. You're going to yarn over, pull through the back loop, or pull through the back piece third loop, the front piece third loop, and then the working loop on your hook. Just like that. You're going to continue doing that all the way around until you've worked into every single half double crochet stitch available. And to even further simplify this, now that we haven't gotten super wordy here, or we have gotten very wordy, I should say, all you're doing here is you're working slip stitches across matched half double crochet stitches. And instead of going through the tops of the stitches, we're cheating a little bit and we're working into the third loops of those half double crochet stitches. So you're just working slip stitches around into the half double crochet stitches, but using their third loops. And the reason we do this is it gives us a really beautiful, clean outer edge to our ears once they're all seamed together. You can do this in the back loops, but honestly, I really think that if you just give yourself a chance to get used to this seaming method, you will find that it's really not that terrible. And believe me, if my mom brain could do this at, 3 months postpartum with my newborn child, if I could figure this out and get the flow of it and feel comfortable, I know you can too. I think I was probably firing on like 6 brain cells total at that time. But anyway, I know everyone's probably sick of me talking about being a mom, but this is super, 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 super easy once it gets started. The thing you just have to watch out for now that we are working around our ear is that you need to make sure that you do not work a joining stitch into the chain 2s. Sometimes I get a little excited, so I forget what I'm doing, and then I look up and I realize I did that and I have to undo it. So just work only into the half double crochet stitches. At the very end of this, you should have 24 or 30 total seaming stitches for this seaming, we'll call it a seaming round. It's not a seaming round. As you can see here, I'm working into the very last half double crochet from the front piece. This one's going to be tight as well, just like in the very first one that we made. So just keep your eyes peeled for that third loop. It can be a little shorter in look. And then there we go. We have finished the seaming. Good job. Chain 2, and then get ready to work the second ear tab. This is the second ear tab for this chunky glue tutorial starting at 27:58. Yes, 27:58, and go. Okay, so to begin row 1 of the second ear tab, we are going to kind of reverse what we did in the beginning of the first ear tab. We're going to increase into the second chain from the hook, chain 1 and turn. And then the last row of this second ear tab, we are just going to work single crochet across, and then you're going to fasten off. So basically, reversing what we did, if you catch my drift. I love a good end how you start kind of approach to designing. I like symmetry, so this always makes my brain really happy, this part, for whatever reason. Once you have those tabs both finished, everything seamed together, it looks great, you've examined it, you frogged it, but you were glad you did because you were able to get it cleanly done. If that is your case, good job. That was the hardest part of this entire pattern. Go ahead and weave in both of those ends because they will need to be out of your way for the last part of this pattern. Okay, so now we're going to stabilize these ears. It's pretty simple. One at a time, you're going to add your ear insert that we previously cut into the middle of your ear. Make sure that it's actually turned inside out, by the way. You don't want the seaming stitches to be showing. So if it doesn't look like this, turn it inside out and then you should be good to go. And then now we're going to add some polyfill stuffing on the inside of it, but make sure that foam is pushed all the way up to the top or whatever you're using for material. It shouldn't be poking out at the bottom. If it is, go ahead and take some time to trim it up. And if it's not, if you've cut it perfectly, move on. Oh, I am actually showing you here. If you want a flatter look to your ears and you don't want to add any polyfill, that's another great look that will work for these ears. You just double your inserts on the insides of the ears. So 2 pieces of foam, or if you have a really, really thick foam and you just want to do one and leave it at that, that's totally fine too. There's so many ways to get these ears to looking how you want them to look. So pick your poison, pick your mouse ear magic, and make it happen. And so you see me adding polyfill on either side of the foam here. Now, you can add as much or as little as you want. Once you do add that foam, it's kind of cool that those seams really just disappear and it looks so cute. Oh, I did not seam up the second pair of ear bases. Oh, look at that. Well, anyway, if you also are like me and you haven't done that, you just watch the next section because it just happened to keep playing and you didn't hit pause, stop the video, go seam up the rest of those ears, stuff them, stabilize them, and I will see you for the final chapter. Okay, grab your hat, guys. We're going to take a break from crocheting. Actually, we're completely done with the crocheting part. We're going to take a break and we're going to talk about our hat before we start adding any marks to it. And we're going to get to know the anatomy of this hat and just how I'm using it to kind of measure and gauge where the ears are going to be placed. Starting with first things first, our hat is usually going to be split, if you're using a traditional baseball hat, into about 6 sections. That's how most hats are manufactured. I got this hat, I believe, off of Amazon or Hobby Lobby. Either way, most are done like this. You have 2 sections in the front, 2 sections at the side, and 2 sections in the back. We're using the side sections to be the areas that we place the ears on. And we're using the middle button and we're using the side eyelets. I'm bringing in my extra pair of mouse ears here to kind of show you, like, when I place my ears on the headband, I have a general rule of thumb for how far apart those ears are going to be. So if you're not going to follow along with my measurements here, you know, kind of keep that in mind as you're watching this video and decide for yourself, is that where you want to place them. But this should all kind of be relatively easy to adjust from my measurements. I really don't think it's that tough. If it is, leave a comment down below and we can address it in another video. But for now, we're going to make sure that we do one thing at a time here. We're going to do a first measurement, and we are going to begin with measuring where the ear is going to start in the innermost part of the hat, or the centermost part. Get your glue gun warmed up for this part as well, because after this hat prep is done, it shouldn't take too long, and we'll start gluing right away, getting those ears onto the hat. Okay, so now that we talked about our hat, let's go ahead and make our first measurement. That button that I see on the top of the hat is going to be my North Star for most of these things. So if you're working with a hat that doesn't have a button, the first step, you're actually going to have to locate the very top crown of the hat. But to begin our first measurement, where our ear will start, we're working one side of the hat at a time. We're going to start our measuring tape in the center of that button, and we're going to drape it alongside the very side of the hat. I like to use that eyelet as kind of like my guide for where to line it up with the center line of the side of the hat. So once I have that draped, I will go along the measuring tape here and find 1.5 inches if I'm working the adult size, and 1.25 inches if I'm working the child size. And as you see, hopefully you can see with the video quality, I just put a singular dot to begin. I don't get too happy with the marker or the pen. And then once I'm, satisfied with that, I see that it's lining up with both the button and the eyelet. I then take my marker and I run a dashed line through that part on the hat. Just like that, super short, about 1/4 inch if you want to measure that little dashed short line there. But it shouldn't be longer than that. It would come out underneath your ears and you'll be able to see that marking. And then our second measurement that we're going to take here is for where the ear is going to end its placement on the hat. So from that mark that we just made, move your measuring tape down so it starts at 0 at that mark, and then you are going to find 2.5 inches for the adult size to mark, or 2 inches for the child size to mark. And as you can probably hear, it's about a 1/2 inch difference for the child to the adult size. And the difference in distance from ear to ear at the top of the hat is also going to be about a 1/2 inch of difference. So in case you were curious about those numbers, that's where I'm getting them from. So just like I did with the first measurement, after I mark the dot, I draw a short 1/4 inch long line through that dot, making sure that both of them are parallel to each other, both dashed lines, and then they line up with the button and the eyelet. Once you have those first two done, go ahead and take the time to just mark the other side of the hat in the same way. If you don't want the brim getting in your way, you can reverse where you start and end your measuring tape. So here, like I'm starting the 1.5 inch mark at the center of the button, making my first measurement mark, and then I'm lining the 2.5 inch mark at the second measurement, and then putting my second mark at the 0 line. So you can kind of see me demonstrate this here. Again, I'm really sorry about being out of frame for part of this. Sometimes filming, you know, you go through such a long process and you just forget who you are. And I look up from my work and I'm like, was I even in frame? I don't know, because that was the only time I had to film it. So I apologize if it wasn't super clear, but I hope with this voiceover, in addition to what you could see, it was clear enough. Anyway, okay, so we have gotten those first two measurements. Second or third thing we're going to do now is we're going to just connect those lines with a dashed line. Wow, that is really out of focus. That's too bad. So the dashed line is going to represent where we are adding or adhering the bottom edge of those ears to. So those unworked stitches from rounds 4 and 5, that's where that edge is going to be attached to the hat. That's why we had to leave those unworked, because we do need them to be kind of like, you know, as you can see, I brought it up here. The bottom of the ear now matches the shape that we just drew on the hat. Repeat the same thing to the other side of the hat, making that skinny rectangle shape by using some dotted lines here. And I mean, you can draw like an actual line, but I just prefer to do the dotted line. It's faster, simpler, and less chaotic. And that is our hat prep. Yay! Oh, wait, actually, I lied. There's one more step. Ooh, you thought you were done. I thought I was done too. For this last step, really simple and quick, we're going to take our scissors and pinch at that area where the short dash line is, those first and second measurements. You're going to take your scissors and just snip a little opening there on that line, right on the line. Do not go past the line that's drawn, because you will have to probably do some sewing work on your hat to keep the holes from opening up. But you just need it a little bit here to be just like a tiny bit open. If you need more room later, as you can see, we'll do another step of this later, you can adjust and cut the hole a little bit bigger. But for now, just go ahead and snip all of those short lines right on the line, and that is officially the last step of the hat prep. Really simple. Now, if you're already thinking ahead and you're like, okay, I'm going to make this practice pair with a baseball cap, but I want to do this with like a beanie later, don't cut your beanie. I would recommend doing the sew version of these ears over that. But let's get into chapter 3, the final assembly, the moment we've been waiting for. All right, guys, welcome to the final part. Now, I hope you have your glue gun heated up. Should be ready to go. If you have 2 settings on your glue gun, just keep it at low. You don't need a high setting. We're just working with fabric here. We're going to work one ear at a time, and we're going to attach them to one side of the hat at a time. So like right now, I am kind of examining my ears. I'm kind of choosing which ones I want facing what way, just because variegating yarn, you know, you want to have a plan for it. I don't know. And it's so funny. After I filmed this video, I'm pretty sure I looked at my ears and I was like, man, I could have did it the other way, but it's okay. This is just, again, a tutorial. So I don't even know if I'd even wear these to the parks. We'll see. I don't keep white things white. First step of assembly. We are going to go ahead and take those tabs that we made, and we are going to pull them through the matching slits that we cut into our little hat prep area there. you're going to see me using my crochet hook to pull it through. That's a hack I kind of figured out really late in the game. I wish I would have figured that out sooner because I had a lot of hats that had bigger holes because I was just cutting the hole bigger. And then I realized, hello, the fabric can squish through if I just give it a little bit of a nudge and pull it through with my crochet hook. So if you are like me and you were struggling to kind of get that tab through, I would use your hook before cutting the hole bigger. So you see me kind of do that again with the other side here. And pretty simple. Those tabs should match pretty evenly up with the those cut slits. Pull them all the way through, and then you have the beginning of our step here. They are out of the way. Now, next step, what we're going to do is we are going to start gluing. And I'm going to give you this disclaimer before we move forward. Please, please, please know that less is more. Less is more with the glue. You do not need to go crazy. You can always add more glue later, but less is always more. Also, you can keep your hook with you because we can use that to help us initially press the ears onto the glue with the hat. First thing I do before I make any gluing, I stretch out my bottom edge of one side of my ear here. And I do that just so I can have a nice start to the surface that's going to be adhering to the hat. And then pick up your glue gun once you've stretched that out. And you guessed it, we're going to add glue to that dotted line that we drew, connecting those cut lines. Again, less is more. What I added here, it was actually kind of almost a little too much. So you can always add more later, but carefully, once you have that glue added, press the bottom edge of those unworked stitches onto your hat. Now, I've done it where I've done the tops of the stitches from those unworked stitches, and I've done it where I've done the back side. Here, I'm doing the back side of those unworked stitches from round 4 and 5. It's up to you. I find it easier to do it this way, and it looks a little bit cleaner. If I try to get the exact top of those stitches, it doesn't always work for me. So, and you can kind of see me like patting it down and starting to adhere it. And then once I'm confident with it, I then continuously press it down and hold it. And maybe hold for about like 5 or 6, 7 seconds. But some yarns are going to adhere really, really fast. Some fabrics of the hats are going to be a little trickier. If you're doing a velvet hat, it's going to be a little harder. So you have been warned. But go ahead, repeat the same instructions to the other side of the hat to get that bottom edge glued down, stretching out the unworked stitches before doing the gluing. And yeah, it's pretty simple. Again, you can use a crochet hook here if you're worried about burning your fingertips on the glue. If you do the right amount of glue, it shouldn't really ooze out too much. You'll feel the heat of it, but it shouldn't ooze out, and you shouldn't really burn your hands. So take your time with this. And yeah, I will see you in a little bit. We're going to talk about the next gluing part. Okay, so here we have the ear tabs. I flipped my hat over so I have access to them now. Looking at the inside of my hat, there's a couple ways you can glue the tabs onto the inside of the hat. The first time I had done this and worked it out, I glued the tabs facing outwards from each other. But then I noticed that with some material of the hats, the glue was kind of poking through and looking a little tacky, like a little scrappy. So I stopped doing it that way, and I started gluing the tabs working inside to each other. And actually it works out because it ends up stabilizing the underside of the ear, which is great because I think initially when I was workshopping this, I didn't know how to get the ears to stay upright, or just it felt like they were flopping more than the headband, obviously, for obvious reasons. But yes, all we're doing here in this step is we are adding glue to the inside of those tabs, and then we are pressing them down towards each other. If this is done correctly, they should both meet in the middle, in the center point of the ears. So again, less is more. You really don't need that much glue unless your hat is slippery on the inside, which it shouldn't be. I don't know, maybe it's slippery. Are you using a slippery hat? Leave a comment down below. What kind of hat are you using? Are you using a standard baseball cap? Are you recycling? Are you thrifting? I'd love to know. I've done everything. I've done thrifted hats. I've done store-bought hats. I've done hats that I just wanted to resurrect from my closet that have just been collecting dust, adding a little extra magic to them. At this point too, you can also add some fray check if you have that to the cut fabric on the inside of the hat. That does help. But this next step, we're going to help with this hole that you see here. So as you can see, we still have a hole that is kind of like peeking out. We're going to take some glue and we're just going to add a little bit of glue right next to that cut edge line of those short lines that we had from the first and second measurements. And then you're going to pinch and press the chain 2 corners down onto that glue that we just dispensed. And that should help with closing up this hole. After this is done, if you've done it the right way, you're not going to see that cut anymore. And that actually should secure the chain 2s at the bottom of your ears. Repeat the same thing to the other side, just adding a little bit of glue. Oh, I got some glue on my fingers there. Adding a little bit of glue to that cut line. You can do it on the edge of the cut line or you can do it right in front of it. And then pinch and press the chain 2 corners carefully onto the hat. And I really do over dramatize how much I kind of press the hat onto it, but I do that because the last thing I want to do is have a hole seen from the outside of my hat. We're doing this homemade, but it is looking good. We are DIYing queens with this, queens and kings. All right, so at this point, if you've done less is more with the gluing and you see things lifting up like those chain 2 corners, or you have just like one part of the edge that was just not really adhering like you'd like it to, go ahead and just take some time to just double check your gluing work and add a little bit of glue, press and hold those pieces down, get it looking cute. And one last piece of advice for the gluing, you know, as you're adding things to the hat, just be careful with the hat. Don't scrunch it up too much. You're going to see some gathering if you do that, as you can see kind of a little bit on my hat. The hats with the sturdier fabric aren't going to get this puckering look from where the ears are added. So also choose your materials wisely if you have the ability to. And yeah, that's it. That is our ear attached to the hat. It's super fast. It's faster, obviously, than the sew version, but you know, I like this. I like hot gluing. I think it makes me feel like a little bit of a dangerous maker. I don't know. It's some risk factor, I guess. But once you've done that, go ahead and attach the other ear with all those same steps to the other side of the hat. If you need to pause the video and rewatch these instructions, please go ahead and do so. You're pulling those tabs through first. Then you're gluing the bottom edges of the ears down. Then you're working on gluing the tabs onto the inside of the hat. And then you're going to finish off by adding glue to those kind of cut lines and kind of cleaning it up as you go. All right, good luck, and I'll see you in a little bit.
Magical makers, I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial. Please give me a thumbs up and let me know how you liked the pattern, and leave any comments and questions down below in the comment section. I always have time for you to answer your questions and to just chat with you, because I'm a mompreneur and a stay-at-home mom, and I really love interacting with people and just connecting on our magical makes. Also, feel free to join my Ever After Club. It is my Facebook group where we can share and show our pictures of our makes and maybe some tips and tricks that we find along the way, seeing like what yarns work with the hats and the headbands and whatnot. I also love to receive emails. So if you'd rather be an email person and forget Facebook and social media and all that jazz, that's all great with me too. All of those things are in the description, how to contact me. And on that note, I hope you all have a creative day adding magic to your stitches in your own way, and I will see you in the next tutorial.